Hey guys, welcome back to Community StarCraft 2. I'm your host Sidewinder, and I'm keeping this game paused because I have a lot to say here before this game gets started in terms of what this game is from. This particular game is from the Europe's Battle.net Invitational, which took place this last Saturday and Sunday, just barely wrapped up. They are releasing the replays, so I'm going to go ahead and cast them for those of you that might have missed them. They are having a little bit of problems with getting VODs up on the Battle.net site. So figured I'd just go ahead and cast them and get these up for you. What has gone on so far is I'm gonna be casting the last 3 sets of games. This is the championship bracket semifinal. So whoever wins this goes on to the finals, and then whoever loses is going to drop down to fight Naniwa in the losers bracket finals. Then whoever wins the match between Naniwa and the loser of this fights the winner of this for the championship. And the championship, or rather the winner of it all, gets about $11,000 is what I read on the Battle.net site. So very handsome prize to take home. And for those of you expecting more NASL stuff, I'm currently trying to figure out if they will let me post their replays on my channel. I did talk to them a little bit to make sure it was okay to do that, and I don't want to invest a bunch more time into casting games that are going to get removed. So I hope they let me keep those up, and I hope I can keep going with those. But let's get this particular game underway. So we're going to have Liquid Ret spawning over here on the right side of Metalopolis, which is now removed from the Ladders map pool, which is so weird to think, since this is such a classic map. It's been around pro gaming ever since the beta of StarCraft. And his opponent is going to be the Red Terran over here, mouz'ThorZain, who had an incredible run in TSL 3. That stands for the Team Liquid Star League. They have a tournament every once in a while. I'm not sure when TSL 4 is supposed to be, but TSL 3 was probably the most entertaining tournament I've ever seen before. Such great games, and ThorZain really came out of nowhere. He played for a team, I can't remember the full name of it, but it was abbreviated PRAE, P-R-A-E. And he was such an unknown player, and he just stomped onto the scene. He beat MC in one of the greatest series I've ever seen. And then he played Naniwa for probably the best final series I've ever seen in that tournament. So ThorZain's such an exciting player. He has a lot of great builds, a lot of great timings that are really fun to watch, at least from Terran. And Ret actually is really coming together. He had a while in tournament scenes where he just did not do a whole lot. But in this last MLG, he played extremely, extremely well. He was really hanging with the Koreans very well, and every single one of his games was close. Everyone lost to the Koreans, of course, but he was probably the best foreigner there that day. He's really coming together. Ret wants to hatch first, so let's pull up the production tab here. Pretty safe considering this is the MLG variant of the map. I'm pretty sure they will have neutral supply depots here, but sometimes they're like invisible. If not, I'm sure they're playing on a map in which you cannot spawn in close positions, so Ret should be fine to go ahead and take this, but you know, on second thought, I'm not sure, because this is the Battle.net Invitational. I would think Blizzard would just use maps that are from their own creation, so never mind, this may be the regular Metalopolis. Meanwhile, ThorZain's going for a tech lab first on his barracks, and he's going to be closing up his wall with an SCV, dropping a supply depot here in just a moment. This is going to show Reaper, as we've seen many times, and here comes that Reaper now. Just going to be getting in there for scouting, a little bit of harassment. ThorZain does have an SCV pulled over there, and Ret does not have spotting at his naturals, so for as far as he knows, well, I mean, the Overlord probably saw it when it was coming across, but ThorZain could do some sneaky stuff with this Reaper. There's a nice little bunker placement you can place right here, and you can stash the Reaper behind it, and the Reaper would do a lot of damage if the bunker gets started right there. Ret does pull a couple of drones to make sure nothing fishy's going on. ThorZain does just walk away. He's probably just going to hold the watchtower for just a moment, or not, maybe just go back home. And the 2 drone and SCV workers cross paths. Here comes the Reaper. This Overlord is going to see it, so you can see him hopping up and down the cliffs. Reaper's going to get in there and do a little bit of scouting and do a little bit of harassment. You can see Ret's pool is already up in normal times. He does not have his speed started yet, but he now has 100 gas, so I'd expect that to start as soon as he has the minerals for it now. The Reaper's now in the base, doing some drone harassment. He does get 1 drone kill so far. There goes the second drone. He's probably going to get a third as well if he target fires correctly. He moves up, and yes, he does get the third. So this is a pretty good harassment for just your first unit out. This Reaper's going to have to fall back. or just continue scouting. Meanwhile, in ThorZain's base, he does a command center coming up. The factory is now in the tech lab. He might see Hellions out of this, but we will see. Hellions are getting very, very popular in Terran vs. Zerg right now. In fact, much more so than they, I think, should be because of how much the Slayers team is using at MLG. And here comes the Blue Flame upgrade, and the Hellions are starting now. So we can see that on the production tab from ThorZain. Command center is almost done. So this is a really tight, really nice build out of ThorZain. This Reaper is still just being annoying, trying to make Rhett spend extra APM on stuff he doesn't want to worry about. Still poking around a little bit, getting shots here and there off on these queens. He does not want to take any damage on this Reaper if he can help it. But here comes more drones out of Rhett, droning pretty normally. There's now a starport coming down here for ThorZain. Reaper does do a little bit more harassment, getting a few shots on the queen while she's off creep. Here comes a spine crawler. As we can see, I'm not sure what Rhett actually knows in terms of what's coming, but this Hellion's going to pop the watchtower right in vision of this Overlord. So Rhett's going to know that Blue Flame Hellions are coming. So here's the Queen and the Reaper getting into another fight. The Reaper's getting a little low, needs to be careful and not die. There's a second Hellion out for ThorZain, a third one in production. I would imagine a fourth as well. Blue Flame Hellions in particular really do well in groups of 2. So if you can split them up 2 and 2, one in the natural, one in the main, it's so hard for Zergs to try and deal with. This Reaper's getting really low. One more hit is going to kill him, so he has to run away. Here's the third Hellion rallying, and you can see a fourth on the way. There's also a medevac on the way. So even though Rhett knows about these Hellions, he needs to be pretty careful and not let a drop get off inside his main. But he has really good Overlord coverage right now, so I don't think that if ThorZain goes for a drop that it's really going to do a whole lot. This Creep Tumor should actually see these Hellions poking around, and yes, it does. There are now Speed Zerglings on the field just to do a little bit of scouting here. He was trying to pick off that Reaper, which he could have if one Zergling would have gotten just one hit on him, but he actually does not. Here come the Hellions up into Rhett's front door, kind of just hanging out. There's now a medevac for elevator drops, but this Overlord's in such great position, it's going to see everything. ThorZain instead is trying to poke around, see if he can find any vulnerabilities in Rhett's defense. He does not see any. There's 2 queens parked on the ramp. The medevac is now going to drop right on these Zerglings, and the Zerglings do a decent job of weakening those medevacs. Look at this micro from ThorZain. This is really, really good. All these Hellions are in the red and the orange. He did not lose a single Hellion or his medevac. He just did plenty of harassment, killed maybe 8 or 10 Zerglings out of that. That's just amazing, amazing micro. This ThorZain is really a player of the future. He's going to be so good as StarCraft continues to develop. His micro is just unreal, and his builds are always so innovative. I really like his Terran vs. Protoss in particular. I haven't seen a ton of his Terran vs. Zerg, so I'm kind of interested to see how this all goes. So back, meanwhile, in ThorZain's base, he does have another barracks coming up. It's going to put him on 3. He has a reactor coming down on his starport, which is strange since there's an idle one right here. Okay, now he puts his barracks on there. The Spire is done for Red, as we can see. Mutas now in production, and a fairly late Baneling's Nest out of Red. I'm not sure if that was predicated on any scouting information he has, but ThorZain has shown like no Marines so far. He's just now getting his Marine production started. There's a tiny window in which these Mutas could actually do a lot of damage, so ThorZain needs to be kind of careful here and not be out of position. He does not have any turrets up yet. He is starting 2 in each, well, 1 in each of his mineral lines. The Zerglings are now coming out. There should be a healthy number of Mutas here, and I'd expect the harassment to start immediately, and yes, it does. So out these Mutalisks come. If they can pick off these Hellions, that will be huge, and the Mutalisks do spot it, so ThorZain's going to have to do some drops and try to get out of there as fast as he can. The medevac is going to go down, but the Hellions will live. So good pick-off there from Rhett to finally get that medevac out of there, but also a very good reaction from ThorZain to save those Hellions. Here comes a pretty large amount of Mutas compared to how many Marines there are. They're going to do as much damage as they possibly can, try to get 1 tank down, and then probably just get out of there. Needs to not lose any Mutalisks. He loses 1, so he trades a Mutalisk for a tank. The Mutalisk numbers are starting to grow. He's now up to 8, so he's gradually getting a grip on this game after he was harassed pretty hard in the beginning, but really didn't take any substantial losses, so that's a pretty big win there for Rhett. There's now an armory coming up, probably to get +2 weapons on ThorZain's bio. You can see Marine shields coming down, as well as more tanks. This is pretty standard play from both players thus far. Rhett's Mutalisk numbers keep swelling. He's going to focus down this turret. He does not want to lose another Mutalisk, which he does. The Marines do press up here to push this out of the base. So you get a trade of a Mutalisk for a turret right there. Not really worth it, but Ret is just kind of feeling it out, seeing if he can find any vulnerabilities in ThorZain's defenses. And one thing this especially does, if you keep your Mutalisks hanging around their base, it makes it so that the Terran player really can't afford to push out and go for some sort of game-ending push. One thing that can be a little scary is if he pushes out with Hellions, but look at this vision coverage from Ret. This is insane. This is what Ret sees from his camera. Look at all this coverage on the minimap. That is fantastic. Unit placement and Overlord placement. You can see everything. He's definitely got ThorZain contained in his base. ThorZain needs to repair that tech lab so it doesn't die. He does have one SCV ready to go. And these Mutalisks are, again, just pinning ThorZain in his base. There's now a Thor coming out for ThorZain. And speaking of that, ThorZain actually has a really awesome Thor build that he puts together for against Protoss. I'd really like to see him use them more against Zerg, but that could be just me because I really like Thors. But anyway, here's the Mutalisk ball continuing to grow up to 15 Mutalisks right now, 3 more on the way, an additional 3 on the way, so this Mutalisk number is getting really, really scary. It's really just coming down to Ret's control of these Mutalisks. He's going to get this next turret without losing any Mutalisks. The Marines stim up here to try to push these Mutalisks away. The one Muta that did get hurt actually died. So, again, he's just keeping ThorZain in his base, keeping this medevac on low energy so that he has to be constantly healing Marines at stim in order to try to catch these mutas out of position. So, Ret is just buying his time. Look at his macro. He's now got a 4th base coming down. As we can see it just finishing right now. An infestation pit. ThorZain is trying to expand. This planetary is not quite done, so Ret has a little bit of time in which he can get this down with fairly little resistance. Look at all these SCVs caught out of position, and mules. You can see the command center has to lift off. That command center is likely going to die, but look at the repairing going down from ThorZain. So down goes the command center though, and a nice trade there if you're Ret, a bunch of Zerglings for a command center. So Ret is really taking a stranglehold on this game. ThorZain has to start another command center, and he's set far that much further behind. You can see ThorZain is also supply blocked right now, and does not have any supply depots on the way, so he needs to get a supply depot, or at least 2, started right away. Look at this huge list of stuff coming down here for Ret. Hive is on the way, as we saw the infestation pit. 7 more drones, a bunch of overlords, +2 attacks for his Zerglings and mutas. Here comes the Mutalisk coming in here again to do a little bit more harassment. Kind of a late response. Marines are out of position, so he's going to get a decent number of SCV kills here. He needs to evacuate right now, though, and he does right on time. So Ret is really just picking ThorZain apart, and this is not a position I've seen ThorZain in, at least not very often. Look at these SCVs all misrallied. He just lost about 8 or 9 SCVs right there, so big deal to lose those. You got a sense that ThorZain is getting frustrated here because he cannot leave his base. These Mutalisks are controlling everything. And down goes most of his Marines. These Mutalisks are going to have free reign if ThorZain is not careful. The 2 turrets that tried to go up were focused down by the Mutalisks. This would be a nice time to retreat, to get those Muta numbers up just a little more and wait for +2 to finish, and Ret definitely does do that. I'd expect Ret to actually take a 5th or take his gold right now. He is so far in control of this game. In terms of income, he's on 91 workers, and look how much further ahead he is in economy right now. Almost 3 times the economy of ThorZain. Here's a Thor in there trying to do some splash on these mutas, but nice magic boxing to prevent that. There is one muta that's in the deep red. And again, I always say this when mutas get hurt like that. If that was me, I would send that muta home and just have him sit in my base for a little while. There's the 5th coming down from Ret. There's a small Marine drop that actually did a decent amount of damage in this expansion, but it's going to be gone as these mutas come here to clean it up. But if you're ThorZain, that's really the only way you're going to get back into this. He needs to buy time to get these Mutalisks away from his base so he can establish his 3rd. Here come the crackling upgrades, which you really don't see very often, as well as the Greater Spire to have Broodlords out. So if Ret gets any Broodlords out, ThorZain is done for. But look how much of a supply discrepancy there is right now. 74 supply discrepancy in favor of Ret.